Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. It's Cynicalex, and with 2024 winding down, I wanted to highlight the top 10 most disappointing things in the game for me this year. We did this trend last year, and I felt like it was a pretty good hit with players, and it was also pretty accurate to some of the things that we saw getting changed in 2024, because I went back and watched that video. So it's interesting to see, if you go and watch that, how many of those things sort of changed for the better in this year. So again, hopefully some of these things get changed for 2025, because they are starting to really get on my nerves, and I know the nerves of a lot of players. Starting off at number 10, it's pretty straightforward, just new characters not being that strong. Sleeper is a bit of a misnomer for this. He's pretty good, but Okoye, man, like, just forgotten before she was even remembered, genuinely. And, you know, having new characters come into the game, you know, Cassandra, stuff like that, it's really fun. It's nice. They're free for a time. You know, there's some hype, whatever, but these characters just come and go so quickly, and, you know, they have cool animations, sure, this and that, but otherwise, it's literally just a Barbie. You know, I know they can't be the most OP. They're not going to come into the game and completely destroy it as a new character. I understand that. They're not going to be tier 4 day 1, sure, but man, like, one of them could be a support. One of them could be pretty good for this or that, or, you know, they could have some niche use, but really it's nothing, and it's just for the looks and the aesthetics and the completions. Looking at Franklin and keeping with the theme of new characters being bad execution of new content. The two big pieces of new content that we got this year besides zombie survival was the multiverse saga, which introduced Franklin and this whole Fantastic Four story, and it introduced emblems. And then it was at the beginning of the year with the Madeline Pryor X-Men epic quest, the Goblin Queen. Both of those pieces of content were mired with mistakes and bad execution. In the case of Madeline Pryor's epic quest, this was a really hype update in a really dull month, January, at the very beginning of the year, and I was very surprised that they were going so hard. And then I realized when we got the update that the reason why I was surprised they were going so hard was because they weren't actually going so hard at all. Madeline didn't get her tier 4 with the update. Exodus was the tier 2, and he still is. And then the mid-month was just Mystique tier 4 and nothing else. It was an absolute disaster. Really overshadowed what should have been a very cool epic quest with just tons of easy to predict mistakes. This is not even just them trying out new things and it failing. This is them sticking to their pattern of old mistakes and just doubling, tripling down in some cases. And obviously, you know, not being surprised when everyone hates it. Of course, in the case of Franklin, you don't know exactly what happened. Again, it's really obvious that when you're going to introduce a new character and a new piece of content, and you're going to gate 50% of the rewards behind a pack, at least give the players the opportunity to buy the pack with crystals. That's been the norm for 8 years in epic quests. No, we're going to have the Multiverse Saga pack where you get Franklin, but you only can buy it with money. Like, who in the marketing room thought that was actually going to fly with players? Literally no one. They should have known that. It's just so obvious to me. And the fact that they're even trying it in the year of our Arisham Lord 2024 is just insane. Piggybacking off of that one into characters that are, you know, again, it's sort of classic Netmarble here with some of these things. Speed villains being replaced super duper fast. So we mentioned already Mystique because she was brought in at the beginning of the year as like the new speed villain, and she replaced Ghost Rider. And then not too long after, Gwenpool comes in, right? Like 6 months later, 5 months later, Gwenpool comes in and replaces her. And now, 4 months after that, it looks like Bullseye's going to replace Gwenpool. So yeah, I don't know really how to feel about that. We'll have to wait and see. The jury is still technically out on that one. It's not guaranteed that he's going to be replacing her. But it's just, they throw darts at a dartboard and it lands on something, and then they're like, okay, I guess this year we're just going to be replacing, you know, last year or 2 years ago, they were just replacing speed female heroes constantly with Shadow Shell into Spider-Gwen into Luna. Now they're like, okay, we're going to do speed villains. I don't know what's going to come next year. Combat villains, combat heroes, who knows? Speaking of combat types, what about combat hero females? This continues to be the most shafted subgenre of character in the game. And I don't know, maybe it's time that we give this up, guys, and we just accept that they're not serious about this subclass. Again, it's only 11 characters out of 272. It's not a huge amount of characters. So yeah, you're talking about 4% of the population of Marvel Future Fight maybe we've made the mistake of really championing this subgenre of characters. But then again, you know, 7 years ago or whatever, they added this as a tag to ABX. So we're kind of not the bad, like, we're not at fault here, right? Why did they do that? Why did they choose combat female hero if this was gonna be their plan for them to just let them languish in the dirt forever? I don't understand. This next one is gonna sound a little nebulous, but when I start mentioning tier 4s like Ebony Maw or tier 4s like Echo, you'll start to get this creeping feeling down your spine, and then you'll remember we had so many bad double mid-months this year. And it sounds weird because I think we only had 2 double mid-months. But what I'm trying to highlight in general is the trend this year of having these really long, stretched out updates that feel so barren. You know, just, hey guys, just X23 is getting her tier 4, and we're going to just chuck in Dakin for no reason. And then she's terrible. I don't want to spoil one of the next ones coming up here on this top 10, but really, I think when they release these double mid-month, triple mid-month updates where the update lasts like almost 2 months, they have to go hard. They have to go really hard with the events, and they have to pump the game full of events to compensate for that. Because if I have to sit and look at Thane's face next to Ebony Maw for 2 weeks, someone's got to pay for that, man. There's just, listen, I'm not, there's no way I'm doing that again. You know, you gotta knock that shit off, because it's just driving players up the wall, and it's driving them away from the game. This may not have affected every player because not everyone is in Vibranium, but I have to say the ban list for this year was egregiously lazy. And I don't know, even more so than before. Maybe it's just my memory playing tricks on me, but when Jean was at the top of Timeline Battle before Sentry, there were bans. Characters got banned. Jean got banned from time to time. But I kid you not, this year, after Sentry took over, now recently Null's taking over, but after Sentry took over in the anniversary in May, June, July, August, September, there was like a 5 or 6 month period where I never changed my PvP team. My PvP team was Sentry, and then Wolverine and somebody else, and it was just Sentry on every team, and I was just cycling through a couple of other characters. It was like Sentry, Adam, and Wolverine, something like that. And I did that team for like 4 or 5 months in a row, which means at 4 months in a row, that's 16 weeks in a row, uninterrupted. Now again, I know 25% of those weeks, because you know, every month they have 1 week where there's no bans, so sure, everyone's going to be available, but you've got to be kidding me. I don't know. I genuinely don't know if Sentry was banned once since he was released. Maybe once, maybe. But it's just crazy to me. And I don't know why they do this. They did it for a long time with Jean, so I shouldn't necessarily be surprised. But you think at some point they would learn from their mistakes? I don't know. Dormammu, honey, it's time for your daily milking. The next one here, man, I know every player feels this. Soul of the Faltine farming has not gotten any buffs this year. Now, it has been featured in addition to Carbonadium and Life Seed in new events and new packs that you could buy with real money. Sure, but actual farming for this has remained static since the buff came into effect that bumped us from 150 to 165. So if you're keeping track at home, that's it. Just 150 was the baseline back in 2022 or 2021 when they introduced tier 4s, and then they've only bumped it up by 15 per day. That's it. No new, War Boss Legend bumping Carbonadium doesn't apply to Soul of the Faltine. New events where you could farm Soul of the Carbonadium applying to Soul of the Faltine? No. New Dispatch Sector coming up soon where you can farm Carbonadium, Soul of the Faltine? No. And I know you need less Soul of the Faltine compared to Carbonadium when you tier 4 character. I'm very aware of that fact. If you go to any tier 4 and you look at their gear, you will see that well, not if my camera's in the way, you'll see that it asks for more Carbonadium 22 than it does for Soul of the Faltine 14. I totally get that, but it's still not that much less. And if you take a look at a lot of players, they all have, I would say the majority of players have the same problem, which is that the gap between these gets wider and wider as the updates go on because they're farming less and less of it, even though they need less of it to advance tier 4s. So I'm really waiting for the day in 2025, and I really hope this one comes true, where they bump up Soul of the Faltine farming by introducing a new GBR or introducing a new dispatch stage or something specifically for Soul of the Faltine. Our poor boy Cyclops and others in the X-Men universe, as well as newer additions to the team like Wiccan, feature in the idea that MCU updates are suddenly missing. I don't know what's going on, but yeah, MFF decided to take a break here from X-Men 97 and Agatha All Along and didn't release an update for them. We're probably way past spoiler territory for the fact that Gambit gets killed in X-Men 97 and the fact that, you know, Joe, or the teenager, is actually Wiccan, Scarlet Witch's son, who had inhabited a dying boy's body, or he copped a dying boy's personality from another dying boy's body in a car crash. Cool, very cool. But genuinely, where are these updates, right? Like, this game lives and dies on MCU content. We can't start ignoring it now in 2024, baby. We gotta go. You gotta go hard into the MCU content. So I'm really hoping like maybe February has, or maybe, I don't know, January has an Agatha All Along update. I can sort of understand. I can sort of forgive an X-Men 97 update just because there's so many characters for that, and maybe they want to really hype up season 2 or something. But even then, I think they're leaving money on the table. I think they could have easily cashed in on an X-Men 97 themed update. I'm not sure why they didn't, but in MFF's defense, not to be too negative, I didn't see any other game having updates featuring those specific pieces of MCU content. So maybe there's some sort of ban from Disney or something's going down there, stopping the games from grabbing that content. Staying with Cyclops, and speaking of tier 4s, useless tier 4s is one of my biggest gripes of this year and should be my number one, if not for the actual number one. War Machine, Hulkbuster, Wong, obviously Cyclops, but you know, Ebony Maw, Echo, X-23. There's so many mid tier 4s released this year. It's absolutely bonkers, bro. Angel's a tier 4. What are we saying? This guy's so ass, bro. He has nothing. This dude has nothing. Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. This needs to stop. You know, they gotta think more carefully about tier 4s. They gotta make them, you know, good for niche content, whatever. Do whatever you have to do. Why don't they replace the character that we use for Dimension Rift farming more frequently? Like, as much as I would hate that, in the sense of having to build new characters for Dimension Rift farming, at least the character would have use. You're like, oh, well, I can't use Hulkbuster anywhere else, but he's actually really fast for Dimension Rift farming. You know what? I'll give him a crack. You know, let's tier 4 the guy. Just pick a piece of content, right? Use the dartboard technique. I'm genuinely surprised that there aren't more shitty tier 4s being highlighted specifically for zombie survival, like X-23, like Human Torch, etc. And they're not even shitty. They just don't have use in the game, which makes them shitty, right? They're not bad characters. They don't have like super low damage. It's just that they're not used in any content because so much of the other content gets overlapped by the Giga Chads of the game, not giving them anywhere to really highlight themselves. So that honestly is my biggest gripe. Personally, that's probably my number one. But this one has to be, this other one I'm about to mention has to be number one, because it's really showing itself right now. It's really ramped up this year, and I know it's driving people absolutely insane. And if you haven't picked it up by now, it's the lag. It's the lag in the game. You see those yellow circles popping up constantly when I'm switching screens. I'm not even in content. I switch screens, I give it a command, and it just has to think for so long, bro. And listen, I'm not in Antarctica. I'm not at the South Pole. I'm not, you know, on the moon. I'm not using some goofy, internet connection. I'm using a stable internet connection that I've used for years. I'm in the same place. I'm in a city, highly populated, right? Millions of people. What is with all this lag, bro? Like, just random lag. I'm just switching between screens. I'm not even playing the game, bro. Look at this. Every time I switch back to the home screen, it has to think for a second. It has to look. There was visible lag the first time I opened up the settings menu, and this goes on and on. This goes on and on. The worst part of this, and the easiest one to highlight, is when you go to select something and you want to see the contents of it. Oh my god, that was fast. That was fast. But genuinely, some of these are brutal. when you press the magnifying glass and you want to know what is being shown, you have to sit there for what feels like ages. You know, it's honestly pretty snappy right now. Those are great, but it should not be this like scroll wheel of doom, bro. It feels like the old days with Macs when you had the rainbow wheel at school because they bought the old iMacs. Ooh, dark days. So hopefully they get the handle on the lag. They bump up the servers or something. They get some new tech there in South Korea, because the lag is really, I think, killing a lot of players' enjoyment of the game. And that sort of goes hand in hand with Multiverse Invasion having connectivity issues. This is part and parcel of the same problem. So I really hope they get a handle on this for 2025. It's such a pesky problem, and I understand that it can be a very expensive solution, and I'm not going to sit here and say like I know what to do or whatever, but at the same time I know that this can absolutely murder players' enjoyment of the game, and you know, it's not even related to the game necessarily, you know. So it's a dangerous thing to leave unchecked, because it spirals out of control, and then before you know it, you know, too many players have quit, and you can't really, how do you convince players to come back when the game's laggy, right? You're like, oh, just trust us, guys, it's not laggy anymore. You know, it's a very hard sell. So yeah, that's my top 10 for top 10 disappointments in 2024. Hit me up in the comments down below. Let me know what your top 10 were. Thank you so much for watching the video. Smash the like button if you enjoy the content. Merry Christmas, happy holidays, and I'll see you in the next one. Take care.